You know, Alex, I've spent 30 years convincing myself that if a material doesn't require a saw blade or a welding torch, it's basically just arts and crafts. But there's something about clay that humbled me faster than a kickback on a table saw. It's like trying to negotiate with a moody toddler who also happens to be made of mud.
Oh, so the master of metal finally met his match in a lump of dirt? I recall you saying last week that pottery was just slow motion masonry.
Yeah, well, pride goeth before the slump. I tried to throw a simple cylinder yesterday, just a basic, honest shape, and by the time I was done, it looked like a pancake that had lost its will to live. Mother Nature's way of reminding you that you aren't actually in charge of the molecules, you're just making suggestions.
Well, that's why we're doing this deep dive today. We're moving from the wood shop to the mudroom. We've been digging into some heavy hitters, from Charles Binns's classic The Potter's Craft to modern guides like The Ceramics Bible. It turns out this isn't just playing with clay. It's chemistry, physics, and a whole lot of patience.
It really is. Binns talks about it like a practical guide for the studio, but to me, it felt more like a lesson in humility. If you don't prepare that clay, what they call wedging, you're basically embedding tiny time bombs of air into your work. You get that piece into the kiln, the heat rises, and pop, your beautiful vase becomes a collection of very expensive shrapnel.
I can see the headline now. Tiger's Workshop, leveled by exploding teacup. But seriously, for the makers listening who are used to working with dead materials like lumber or steel, clay is alive, isn't it? It changes as you touch it.
Totally alive. It's all about the water of plasticity. You're balancing on a razor's edge, too dry and it crumbles like an old biscuit, too wet and it's just a puddle on your wheel. Binns has these incredible plates, photos from 1910, showing the drawing up of a piece. It's this vertical dance. You aren't just pushing the clay, you're coaxing the particles to stack on top of each other.
I was reading in Louisa Taylor's Ceramics Bible about the different stages. You've got your slip, your plastic clay, and then that leather hard stage. That seems to be the sweet spot for makers who like precision.
That leather hard stage is where the magic happens for guys like me. It feels like carving dense soap or maybe a cold block of cheddar. That's when you do the turning, putting the piece back on the wheel and using metal loops to shave off the excess. It produces these long, satisfying ribbons of clay. It's the closest pottery gets to using a wood lathe.
But before you get to the ribbons, you have to survive the wheel. Emily Reason's Studio Wheel Throwing mentions that centering is the hurdle that breaks most people. You were complaining about your wrists yesterday. Is it really that physical?
It's a wrestling match, Alex. If that 5-pound lump of clay is even an eighth of an inch off center, it'll wobble like a shopping cart with a bad wheel. You have to lock your elbows into your hips and basically use your entire skeleton to force the clay into submission. I looked like I was trying to pin a greased pig to the floor.
And here I thought it was all ghost soundtracks and romantic pottery scenes.
There is nothing romantic about gray sludge flying into your eyelashes.
Okay, so let's talk about the non-wheel folks. Because not everyone has room for a heavy motorized wheel in their makerspace. I was looking through The Joy of Clay and Emily Reinhardt's guide. They talk a lot about hand building and decorating. Is that the gateway drug for makers?
Absolutely. Slab building is where a woodworker feels right at home. You roll out the clay like dough, cut it into precise shapes using a template, and glue it together using slip, which is basically just clay-flavored mud glue. You can make boxes, planters, rectangular vases, things with sharp, clean lines that don't require you to be a Zen master on a spinning wheel.
I liked the idea of the pottery project journal we saw. It sounds like something you'd hate, meticulously recording process details and techniques. But it seems vital. In woodworking, if I use a walnut stain, I know what I'm getting. But with glazes, it's basically a chemistry experiment where the results are hidden behind a brick door for 12 hours.
That's the most terrifying and beautiful part. You paint on this dull, chalky pink liquid, you put it in the kiln at 2000 degrees, and it comes out as a vibrant, glassy cobalt blue. It's like sending your kid off to college and having them come home as a completely different person. If you don't write down your recipes and your firing times, you'll never recreate that one perfect accident.
Speaking of accidents, Jackie Atkin has that book, 250 Tips, Techniques, and Trade Secrets. She talks about improvising tools from everyday kitchen utensils. That's very on brand for our crowd. Why buy a $30 rib tool when you have a credit card and a spoon?
My favorite tool right now is an old serrated butter knife and a piece of fishing line. I used the fishing line to slice a vase off the bat yesterday. It's the most satisfying cut you'll ever make, cleaner than any Japanese pull saw, but you have to be careful. As Binns points out in his Defects of Glazes chapter, If you leave a fingerprint or some oil from a greasy sandwich on the clay, the glaze won't stick. It'll crawl, leaving a bare bald spot on your piece that looks like a mistake you can't hide.
That sounds like fisheye in a paint job. See, the disciplines aren't that different.
They aren't. But the stakes feel higher because of the fire. That's what Binns calls it. You can spend 40 hours carving a vessel, but if you didn't let it dry slowly enough, if the moisture in the center of the handle is still there when the kiln hits 212 degrees, that water turns to steam, expands, and bang. You've got a jigsaw puzzle you can't put back together.
So, for someone listening who's looking to add a clay corner to their shop, what's the actual barrier to entry? We aren't all going to buy a $5,000 scut kiln on day one.
You start small. Get a bag of stoneware clay. It's cheap, maybe 20 bucks for 50 pounds. Get some basic loops, a sponge, and a wire cutter. Find a local community kiln or a pottery studio that lets you buy shelf space. You don't need the heavy machinery to start hand building. Just don't do what I did and try to dry your first piece with a heat gun to speed things up.
Oh no, what happened?
It cracked so loud, I thought a window had broken. Clay has a memory. If you stress it out by drying it unevenly, it'll hold a grudge. It might look fine when it's dry, but as soon as the heat hits it in the kiln, that grudge turns into a crack. You have to treat it like a delicate ecosystem.
It sounds like pottery is the ultimate exercise in letting go. You do the work, you hand it over to the fire, and you hope for the best.
It's the masterclass in non-attachment. In jewelry or metalwork, I can always weld a bit more on or grind a bit more off. In pottery, once it's fired, the state of being is fixed. It's stone.
I think that's why Reinhardt's book on decorating is so popular. It's about making it yours before it becomes permanent. Gold luster, inlay designs, textures. It's about leaving your mark on the earth, quite literally.
My mark right now is mostly just a lot of muddy towels in the laundry. But there's a takeaway here for every maker, regardless of their medium. We get so caught up in the precision of our tools, the digital calipers, the laser levels, that we forget our hands were the first tools we ever had. Clay forces you back to that. It's just your skin against the earth.
That's surprisingly poetic for a guy who spent the morning complaining about his lower back.
Hey, even an old dog likes the feel of the grass now and then.
So, the big lesson?
Don't be afraid to get messy, but respect the process. Whether you're reading Binns from 1910 or a blog post from 2024, the clay hasn't changed. It requires the same patience it did 1,000 years ago. You can't rush the drying, you can't cheat the wedge, and you definitely can't argue with the kiln.
I think I'll stick to the Pottery Notes journal for now and maybe watch you explode a few more bowls before I give the wheel a spin.
Deal. But I'm making you help me clean the splash pan. Next time, we're talking about why you should never, ever try to forge your own lathe chisels out of old leaf springs unless you have a very good first aid kit.
Looking forward to it, Tiger.